I was halfway through my latte when my client, a tech investor named Kieran, leaned in and said something that made my blood run cold. "Someone from your office offered me $5,000 to drop you." For a second, I thought I misheard him over the coffee shop noise. Then he said her name, Vanessa. My chest tightened as he explained she had reached out privately, met him at a hotel bar, and tried to convince him I was losing control of his $10 million property search. I laughed it off on the outside, but inside I was shaking. This wasn't just office drama anymore. This was my whole year's income sitting on the line. Kieran looked me straight in the eye and said, "I thought you should know. She's out to sabotage you." I swallowed hard and realized this coffee meeting wasn't just a friendly check-in. It was my warning shot. The noise of the coffee shop suddenly felt too loud, too normal for what I had just heard. My hands gripped the cup tighter as I tried to process the betrayal. Everything I had worked for was under attack, and I hadn't even seen it coming until this very moment. On the drive back to the office, I replayed every late night that had led to this deal. 7 years of grinding in real estate. Open houses on Sundays, missed birthdays, showing homes to people who ghosted me after months of work. Kieran wasn't some easy catch who fell into my lap. I had spent weeks sending property comparisons, touring private listings, and learning exactly what kind of kitchen faucet he preferred. I had finally found him a waterfront estate that made his eyes light up like a kid on Christmas morning. That commission could wipe out my student debt and give me breathing room for the first time in years. I was proud of how I had built his trust brick by brick. That's why Vanessa's betrayal felt so personal. It wasn't just about money. She was stealing the one thing I had earned fair and square through honest work. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the steering wheel, thinking about all the sacrifices I had made. The relationships I had put on hold, the vacations I had skipped, the endless hours of research and preparation. All of it now threatened by someone who wanted a shortcut to success she hadn't earned. Walking through the glass doors of our office, I suddenly couldn't unsee all the moments I had brushed off before. The accidental times Vanessa asked, "Hey, what's that guy looking to spend?" The way she volunteered to shadow my showings, hovering a little too close to my clients with her bright smile. I remembered when she forgot to forward me an email from a buyer until they had already signed with someone else. I had chalked it up to newbie mistakes because I didn't want to seem paranoid or territorial. Now, sitting at my desk and watching her laugh with our manager across the office, I realized those weren't accidents at all. They were rehearsals for this moment. My throat tightened as a dark thought crossed my mind. If she had done this to Kieran, how many others had she quietly stolen from me? And how many more would she take if I stayed quiet? I pulled up my client list on the computer screen, scanning through names and wondering which ones she had already contacted behind my back. The office suddenly felt different, like I was seeing it clearly for the first time. Every smile seemed fake, every conversation suspicious. Trust had walked out the door with my morning coffee. I watched her from across the office as she scrolled through her phone, nails perfectly manicured, looking like she didn't have a single care in the world. Every cell in my body wanted to march over there and scream at her in front of everyone. But I sold 7-figure homes for a living, and losing control even for 1 minute was not an option in this business. I answered emails with shaking hands, pretending like nothing was wrong, while my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. If I blew up without solid proof, I would become the emotional and unprofessional one, and she would get to play the innocent victim. I couldn't let her flip the script like that. So I pasted on a neutral smile and thought to myself, fine. If she wanted to act like a villain, I would treat this like a strategy game. And I was going to play to win. I took a deep breath and forced my fingers to stop trembling as I typed out a response to a client email. Professional composure was my armor right now, even though inside I felt like screaming. I glanced at her again, laughing at something on her screen, completely unbothered. She had no idea what was coming her way. That night, I ended up at my sister's apartment, sitting on the floor still in my work clothes, eating cold pizza straight from the box. I laid it all out for her. The $10 million listing, the commission that could change my life, The bribe Vanessa had offered my client. My sister didn't understand real estate jargon, but she understood betrayal perfectly. If she's bold enough to offer him cash, my sister said slowly, she's done this before. She's just never been caught. I realized she was absolutely right. I wasn't dealing with a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. I was dealing with a pattern of behavior. My sister looked me dead in the eye with that protective older sister stare. Don't just survive this, she said firmly. Use it. Her words stuck in my head the entire drive home as an idea started forming in my mind. I stayed on her couch for another hour, talking through every detail I could remember about Vanessa's behavior over the past year. Little things that hadn't seemed important at the time suddenly took on new meaning. My sister grabbed a notebook and we started making a timeline together, connecting dots I had been too busy to notice before. By the time I left, I felt less like a victim and more like someone preparing for battle. The next day, I asked Kieran if he would be willing to tell me exactly what had happened during their meeting. We met in a quiet corner of a hotel lobby, away from anyone who might recognize us from my firm. He pulled out his phone and asked, "Do you want to hear it?" He had actually recorded their entire conversation because in his world, people tried to buy influence all the time, and he had learned to protect himself. I hadn't even thought to ask for proof yet, but he just offered it freely. On the audio recording, I heard Vanessa's voice, smooth and confident, promising him better access and priority showings. Then she casually slid in the $5,000 offer, like it was nothing unusual. She said I was too spread thin for a caliber of client like him. My face burned with humiliation, but underneath that shame, something else lit up inside me. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was hard evidence. I listened to the recording 3 times, making mental notes of every damaging statement she made. Kieran watched me carefully, probably wondering if I was going to break down. Instead, I felt something cold and focused settle over me. "Can you send me a copy of that?" I asked quietly. He nodded and pulled out a flash drive from his pocket, already prepared. "I figured you'd need it," he said with a knowing look. That night, I sat on my couch with all the lights off, replaying the recording over and over until I had memorized every terrible word. Every lie she told about me felt like a physical punch to my stomach. She called me desperate, said I would probably discount my commission just to keep him from leaving. I didn't know it was possible to feel this angry and this focused at the exact same time. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down timestamps, marking every false claim, every insult, every moment where she offered cash to steal my client. My anger started to feel less like a wildfire burning out of control and more like a laser beam cutting through steel. I wasn't just mad anymore, sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I was building a case, piece by piece, and I knew exactly who needed to see it when the time came. The blue light from my laptop screen cast shadows across the pages as I typed up a detailed summary of everything on the recording. I organized it by severity of offense, cross-referencing each statement with our company's written ethics policies. By 2 a.m, I had a document that read like a legal brief. My eyes were burning from staring at the screen, but I felt more awake than I had in weeks. This was war now, and I was finally armed. In between property showings and answering client emails, I started reading through our company's ethics policies like they were a thriller novel I couldn't put down. There it was in black and white. No bribes to clients, no poaching other agents' leads, no misrepresentation of a colleague's work. It was all spelled out clearly, but I also remembered the whispered stories around the office, complaints that got swept under the rug, victims who were told to be team players and let it go. Management only moved when clients complained publicly, not when agents got hurt quietly. That's when it clicked in my head, like a lock turning. This couldn't just be my word against hers in some he said, she said situation. I needed the one thing they couldn't ignore or explain away. I needed a client with receipts, and I already had one who didn't tolerate dishonesty. I just needed to convince him to help me pull back the curtain completely. I printed out the relevant policy pages and highlighted every section that Vanessa had violated. The stack of papers grew thicker as I dug deeper into the employee handbook. I found clauses about fiduciary duty, client confidentiality, and professional conduct that she had trampled all over. Each page felt like another piece of armor I could wear into battle. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about holding people accountable when the system wanted to protect them. The next time we met, I told Kieran exactly how much this deal meant to me, letting my professional mask slip for just a moment. Not just the money, though that mattered, but the 7 years I had spent trying to be one of the few female agents taken seriously in this city. He listened quietly, his expression thoughtful, then said 4 words that changed everything. "If you want to expose her, I'm in." He suggested letting her think her little plan was actually working. He would take her calls, respond to her messages, and play along just long enough to see how far she would really go. I was terrified at first because it felt like handing my entire career to a stranger and hoping he wouldn't drop it, but he had already proven he was on my side. As we sketched out the plan on a napkin, I realized something important. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was running the play. Kieran leaned back in his chair and said something that made me respect him even more. "I've seen too many good people get pushed out by snakes like her. Someone needs to stop it." His voice was firm, almost angry on my behalf. We spent the next hour mapping out exactly how he would string her along, what questions he would ask, and how we would document everything. By the time we left that coffee shop, I felt like I had gained not just an ally, but a partner in justice. Back at the office, Vanessa turned up the fake sweetness to a level that made my teeth hurt. She popped by my desk asking, "Everything okay with your big client?" loud enough for others nearby to hear her concern. She casually dropped that she was happy to step in if I was feeling overwhelmed by the workload. Our manager, who loved numbers more than people, nodded along like she was doing me some kind of favor. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice calm and professional, saying, "Thanks, but I've got it handled." Meanwhile, I saw her name flash on Kieran's phone screen when I was with him for a showing. He silenced the call with a small, knowing grin aimed at me. In front of her, I stayed quiet and steady, like always. Inside, I was counting down the minutes until she crossed a line she couldn't come back from. The trap was set. I watched her walk away from my desk, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor, and wondered how long it would take for her to hang herself with her own rope. She had no idea that every text she sent to Kieran, every voicemail she left, was being saved and documented. The web she thought she was weaving around my client was actually closing in around her. I allowed myself a tiny smile as I turned back to my computer. Patience had never been my strong suit, but watching her dig her own grave made the waiting almost enjoyable. A few days later, Kieran sent me a text message that made my heart race. She wanted to meet again, and this time she said it was urgent. He recorded the entire second conversation with my full knowledge and permission. When we listened to it together afterward in his car, it was even worse than the first time. She didn't just offer him $5,000 again. She suggested they could structure the commission a different way, so she could kick something back to him after the closing. She flat out told him I was on the verge of losing other deals too, implying I was unstable and unreliable. Hearing her drag my entire career through the mud like that flipped a switch inside me. This wasn't just petty office competition anymore. This was character assassination, pure and simple. I closed my eyes and made a silent promise to myself. I was taking this as high as it would go, no matter what happened. When I opened my eyes again, Kieran was watching me with concern etched on his face. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded slowly, but we both knew I wasn't. Not yet. The rage burning in my chest needed an outlet, and I was done letting fear hold me back. "Play it again," I told him, pulling out my phone to take notes. Every illegal suggestion, every lie about my competence, every manipulation tactic she used needed to be documented with precision. This recording was twice as damning as the first one, and she had handed it to us gift-wrapped. As I started digging through my old emails with fresh eyes, I noticed a disturbing pattern I had missed before. There were times when I had suddenly gotten cut out of a promising lead for no clear reason. Times when a client had changed their mind at the last second, only for me to see the same property close under someone else's name a month later. Usually hers. I cross-checked dates and realized our local manager had been copied on half of those email threads. It was like watching a puzzle snap into place, all the pieces I hadn't wanted to see before. Vanessa wasn't just some rogue agent acting alone. She had been swimming in water that someone above her had dirtied for her benefit. My anger shifted from focusing on a single person to seeing the whole system that had let her thrive. If I only took her down, the machine would keep running and hurt someone else. I created a spreadsheet tracking every suspicious deal over the past 18 months, color-coding them by severity, and listing the people involved. The pattern was impossible to ignore once I laid it all out visually. Our manager's name appeared so frequently, it made me sick. He had been actively helping her steal from the rest of us, probably getting some kind of kickback himself. This wasn't just about stopping Vanessa anymore. This was about burning down a corrupt system that preyed on honest agents like me. The scope of what I had uncovered was almost overwhelming, but it also gave me a strange sense of purpose. I lay awake that night doing math in my head, calculating every number that kept me trapped. My debt, my savings, my rent, my car payment. If this whole thing backfired on me, I could get iced out of the industry. No referrals, no support from the office, quietly pushed to the margins until I gave up and quit. Part of me wanted to keep my head down, close the deal with Kieran, and pretend none of this had ever happened. But then I pictured Vanessa doing this exact same thing to someone newer next year. Someone who didn't have a client like Kieran willing to speak up for them. That image bothered me more than all my personal fears combined. By 3 a.m, I knew my choice. I would rather go down swinging with the truth than stay standing in a place that rewarded people like her. I picked up my phone and texted Kieran 4 simple words. I'm ready. Let's go. Before I could even make my move, the damage hit me where it hurt most. A different client suddenly canceled our listing agreement out of nowhere, saying they had heard I was disorganized and had dropped the ball on a showing. A showing I never even knew was scheduled. Their new agent, Vanessa, of course. The note in our system made it look like I had missed a key phone call, except when I checked the call logs. That call had never even reached my phone. Someone had messed with the notes deliberately. That was the exact moment when all the fear burned away completely and was replaced by pure disgust. She wasn't just fighting for deals in a competitive market. She was actively burning my professional reputation to keep herself warm. I looked at my reflection in the office window, eyes tired but crystal clear, and whispered to myself, enough. This ended now, one way or another. Later that same week, Vanessa cornered me in the hallway outside the copy room with a sympathetic frown plastered on her face. I heard you lost that listing, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. You doing okay? Like she hadn't just twisted the knife herself. She casually mentioned that if Kieran ever felt neglected by me, she would be more than happy to take him off my plate so I could focus on smaller deals better suited to my abilities. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears as rage flooded through me. Every single word was a test, daring me to lose control in front of witnesses. I stared at her for a long moment, then let a little steel creep into my voice for the first time. You really think people don't talk? I said quietly. For just a flicker of a second, her eyes went hard and cold. Then the sweet mask snapped right back into place. But I had seen it. That tiny crack told me everything. I sent an email directly to the managing partner, completely bypassing our local manager. Not to the person who ran our branch, but to the person whose name was actually on the building directory downtown. I asked for a confidential meeting to discuss serious ethical concerns involving a major client. I made sure to mention Kieran's full name and the size of his potential property purchase. That detail got their attention fast. An assistant called me within 3 hours to set up a date and time. When I asked if Kieran could be present at the meeting, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then they agreed. The moment I hung up, my hands started trembling uncontrollably. This was it. The point of no return. Once I walked into that conference room and opened my mouth, there would be no going back to pretending everything was fine. I stared at the email confirmation on my screen and thought, this either saves my career or detonates it completely. The days leading up to the meeting felt like standing on a train track, hearing something massive coming toward me, but not being able to see it yet. Around the office, rumors started swirling about a new leadership role opening up in the luxury property division. Vanessa dropped hints to anyone who would listen that she was being seriously considered for the promotion. She ordered an expensive new blazer, came in early, stayed late, making a whole show of her hustle and dedication. Our colleagues congratulated her on how fast she had risen through the ranks. I kept my head down, finalizing every last detail on Kieran's preferred property, double-checking each document twice. My stomach was in knots constantly, but there was a quiet center inside me that felt strangely ready. The morning of the meeting, I looked in the bathroom mirror and made myself a promise. I wouldn't let them talk me out of what I knew was true. We all sat in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. The managing partner at the head of the long table, our HR director sitting to one side, me and Kieran positioned on the other. My heart was hammering so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it echoing in the quiet room. The managing partner asked politely what this meeting was about. Kieran, calm as anything, said, "Someone from your firm tried to buy my loyalty with cash." He said Vanessa's name clearly. Then he pulled out his phone and played the first recording. Her voice filled the room, smooth and ugly at the same time, offering him money to ditch me and tearing down my work with lies. I watched the managing partner's face transform from bored politeness to solid stone. When the recording finally ended, the silence felt heavier than the massive table between us. The partner spoke carefully. "She doesn't know about this meeting yet. I think she should join us." My breath caught as the assistant stepped out. Vanessa walked into the conference room with a bright smile on her face, clearly thinking she was being called in for something good, maybe even that promotion. When she spotted me sitting there next to Kieran, her smile faltered for just half a second before she recovered. The managing partner asked her calmly, "Have you been in contact with this client outside of assigned property showings?" She stammered a bit, then claimed she had just offered additional support because she had heard through the office that I was feeling overwhelmed. When the second recording started playing, the one where she talked about splitting commissions illegally and painting me as an unstable agent, all the color drained from her face. She tried desperately to spin it, saying the audio must be edited or taken out of context. Then she flipped tactics and claimed I had put Kieran up to this whole thing because I was jealous of her success. For a moment, I felt physically sick. Then the managing partner said very quietly, "This isn't the first complaint we've had about you, Vanessa." The HR director opened a thick folder and started reading off other incidents I had known nothing about. Other agents losing leads right after Vanessa had offered to help them. Clients getting confused about who their primary contact person actually was. Internal notes that had been mysteriously altered in the system. I had no idea the problem went this deep or affected this many people. Then an email thread appeared on the screen on the wall where our local manager praised Vanessa for aggressively securing business and suggested reallocating leads from softer agents. My name was specifically mentioned. My chest felt tight as I struggled to breathe normally. This wasn't just Vanessa operating alone. Our manager had been feeding her my clients deliberately, the managing partner's jaw visibly clenched. He dismissed Vanessa from the room without another word. As she walked out, she threw me a look filled with pure hatred. For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink away from it. I met her eyes steadily. By the end of that meeting, Vanessa was placed on immediate suspension, pending a formal investigation into her conduct. Our local manager was relieved of certain responsibilities while they dug deeper into the lead assignment system. On paper, it sounded like a complete win for me. But as I rode the elevator down to the parking garage afterward, I felt strangely hollow inside, instead of victorious. Office politics were always messy and complicated. Sometimes, the people who spoke up didn't get rewarded for their bravery. Sometimes they just got quietly labeled as trouble and pushed out anyway. What if the firm decided I was too risky to keep around now? What if they buried the whole ugly situation and expected my silence in return for not firing me too? That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had just saved my sanity and career, or if I had accidentally signed my own exit papers without realizing it. A few days later, I got called back to that same conference room. This time, the atmosphere felt completely different. Tighter, more serious, almost tense. The managing partner thanked Kieran formally for his cooperation and mentioned how valuable his perspective had been to their investigation. That's when Kieran dropped the bomb that changed everything. He wasn't just some wealthy client shopping for property. He was part of an investment group that owned a significant chunk of the company's parent brand. They also owned the building our office rented. "Integrity is non-negotiable in our portfolio," he said calmly, looking directly at the managing partner. "We don't invest in companies that tolerate this kind of behavior." I watched the managing partner's face change completely as the full weight of that statement sank in. Suddenly, this wasn't about one rogue agent anymore. It was about the firm's entire reputation with someone who could actually hurt them financially. The power in the room had just shifted, and it was leaning my way now. Within 1 week, an internal memo went out to the entire office. Vanessa's contract was officially terminated for serious ethical misconduct. Our local manager had resigned to pursue other opportunities, which everyone knew was code for being forced out. There was no dramatic announcement or office-wide meeting, just a sudden clearing of 2 big desks by the windows. The managing partner called me into his office privately and offered me the leadership role for the luxury division, complete with a better commission split and more control over my own clients. It was clearly framed as a reward for my courage, but I could hear the quiet undertone. "Please don't take this story public and damage us further." For the first time in 7 years, I was the one with actual leverage in a negotiation. I told them very clearly I would accept their offer, but only on certain conditions. Transparent lead systems, written ethics protections for all agents, and mandatory training that couldn't be brushed aside. The managing partner hesitated, then slowly nodded. I had won. The day we finally closed on the $10.5 million waterfront estate, the conference room felt completely different than it had weeks before. No tension crackling in the air, no lies waiting to explode, just clean paperwork and overwhelming relief. Kieran signed the last page with a satisfied smile, then slid a white envelope across the polished table toward me. Inside was a personal check for more than the $5,000 Vanessa had offered him to betray me. He called it interest for not selling me out when he could have. He also handed me a handwritten list of 2 more wealthy friends who needed agents they could actually trust with their business. As I walked out of that building with the finalized deal in my leather bag, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safety that I had earned completely by myself. Not because I had played along with a corrupt system, but because I had stood my ground when it would have been so much easier to just look away and stay quiet. Months later, I stood outside a new office building, key in my hand, looking up at the glass door. My name was printed on the wall in small but solid letters, right above the words Luxury Estates Group. I hadn't left the firm entirely after all. Instead, I had negotiated a partnership where I ran my own team under their larger umbrella, with Kieran's investment group quietly backing the expansion. The lead system was completely transparent now, and younger agents kept telling me they finally felt safe reporting problems. Word had spread through the industry about what had happened, though the details stayed mostly private. I heard through the grapevine that Vanessa was working at a smaller brokerage across town now, hustling rental apartments, her reputation following her like a dark shadow. I didn't gloat about her downfall. I didn't need to anymore. Every single time I stepped into my office and saw my team working honestly together, I was reminded of something important. The best revenge wasn't watching her fall. It was building something she could never buy, never fake, and never take from me again.